policy responses. This is the second China Commission hearing this year on the situation in Hong Kong. During our May hearing, the Commission heard compelling testimony from Hong Kong pro-democracy advocates, including Martin Lee and Nathan Law, who expressed serious concerns about the extradition bill that was quickly moving towards becoming law at that time. That legislation would have put anyone in Hong Kong, including U.S. citizens, at risk of extradition to mainland China, where lack of due process and custodial abuse have been well documented. Over the last 16 weeks, millions of people from all walks of life in Hong Kong have taken to the streets in an unprecedented and sustained show of unity. The protesters have inspired the world and have risked their lives, their health, their jobs, and their education to fight for the future of Hong Kong. Thank you for your courage and thank you for your bravery. We stand in solidarity with you. As protests continue throughout the summer, Hong Kong in peaceful demonstrations. The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights has called for an investigation. The UK has suspended export licenses for the sale of tear gas and crowd control equipment. And the House that would prohibit you demands are specifically what progress has been made by the Chinese and Hong Kong governments on achieving them, what remains to be done, and how we in Congress and the international community might be helpful. The One Country, Two Systems framework was enshrined in the 1984 Sino-British Declaration and Hong Kong's basic law. This is an international treaty signed by the Chinese government on commitment to the rule of law. Kind of nice over here.
It's quiet, yeah. So there's no different pace. We had 4 votes and demands that they're set to the peak. We stand with you, and by we, I mean this is a bicameral, bipartisan commitment, as you will see today and have seen in the past few days on these efforts across both political stand with you. Includes, by the way, 80,000 Americans who reside there. We've exposed them to the justice system, or the so-called justice system, or the so-called justice system of the Chinese Communist Party. The same justice system, the same justice system that routinely tortures those in its custody, every and any demand for justice. The proposed bill exposed the very real could have been 400 that have emerged of the police's brutal treatment of demonstrators while in their custody. This weekend, for example, we saw images of the police holding down a protester whose head was bleeding and spraying into the wound on the head pepper spray, which is an act of total cruelty. We watched the police throw tear gas grenades at journalists, many of whom are far away from the demonstrators. Since the 21st of July, pro-Beijing and playing on their cell phones after attacking journalists and demonstrators. Although Hong Kong's chief executive may have promised, has proven that it is not committed to a free and autonomous future for Hong Kong, nor is it one of rule of law or justice. The other Hong Kong, the real one, is the one of its, in my belief, in the free world to respond. I hope we find the party and its proxies who are need to hold Chinese and Hong Kong officials accountable. The United States and other precisely because the world or know that they're us. We're here today to examine China. Hong Kong is not a Chinese.
And let me just, we'll introduce each one of them and then we'll go. Okay, we'll, all right, we'll yield to Mr. Smith.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. What a panel of heroes, the best and the bravest and the brightest. Thank you for being here and bearing witness to a very ugly truth as to what Hong Kong is doing. It has been a long, hot summer in Hong Kong, as we all know. The inspiring and courageous authoritarian societies. The people of Hong Kong have shown the world that a free people will not accept this egregious abuse and the most intrusive system of surveilling in the world today. Why would political state determined by Beijing? Given a choice, no one would. As inspiring as the process of protest itself is extremely alarming. Representative McGovern and I were the first members of Congress to call on the Trump administration sale of tyranny made by Chinese officials, particularly given that this year the Hong Kong and Chinese governments are alone responsible for the grievance expressed by the protesters, and they alone can peacefully end the protests by addressing the demands for universal suffrage and investigation of police threats. Blaming the United States government and blaming the U.S. Congress for the protest is an act of cowardly propaganda and not befitting a nation such as China, which has aspirations of global leadership. It is time for the U.S. policy to respond to Beijing's long-term ambitions in Hong Kong and pass the Hong Kong and Democracy Act with my CE co-chair, Senator Brown. The bill allows for a more robust U.S. response to the steady erosion of Hong Kong's bill, and you as well, reflect the kidnapping of booksellers, the disqualification of elected lawmakers, the political prosecutions of Joshua Wong, Nathan Law, Benny Tai, and others. However, every single time we pushed for passage, there was opposition from the diplomats, the so-called experts, the committee chairs of both the House and Senate, and the American Chamber of Commerce in Hong Kong. We were told not to upset the status quo. We were told that upgrading U.S. businesses. It is the exact same advice that we have been hearing on China since Tiananmen Square. And the big issue was then MFN. China experts have failed the American people, and their advice helped gut parts of our own economy. Their advice this time will fail the people of Hong Kong as well. Specifically, Mr. Chairman, as you know, the bill directs participating in nonviolent protest activities in Hong Kong. It requires an annual report from the Commerce Department on whether the Hong Kong government adequately enforces U.S. export control and sanctions laws. It requires the Secretary of State to submit a strategy to Congress to protect U.S. citizens and businesses because of actions taken by the Chinese Communist government. It requires the President to identify any sanctioned persons in Hong Kong or in mainland China responsible for the erosion of Hong Kong's autonomy and serious abuse of human rights. We have wide agreement for this legislation. It is time that it passed. I've heard it said that the business of Hong Kong is business. I believe it's clear.
All the way from Hong Kong to provide their testimony to this Congress. The panel includes Joshua Wong, a pro-democracy activist and the Secretary General of Demosisto. At the age of 15, he organized protests against patriotic education in Hong Kong. Subsequently, he rose to prominence as a core leader of the 2014 Umbrella Movement. Mr. Wong was also one of Hong Kong's first 3 political prisoners since 1997. sentenced in 2018 with Nathan Law and Alex Chow for leadership roles in the Umbrella Movement. Most recently, he was arrested in August 2019 for his role in a peaceful protest outside police headquarters during the anti-extradition bill movement. Denise Ho, a pro-democracy and LGBTQ rights activist and an award-winning Hong Kong-based singer, producer, and actress. Ms. Ho is a prominent supporter of the anti-extradition bill protest in Hong Kong and a leading figure in Hong Kong's pro-democracy movement. She was arrested during the 2014 Umbrella Movement for taking part in nonviolent protests. The Chinese government has banned her from performing in China, and in July 2019, Ms. Ho addressed the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva on Hong Kong, during which she was repeatedly interrupted by the Chinese delegation. Sunny Zhang, a spokesperson for the Hong Kong Higher Education International Affairs Delegation, and an activist from the Student Union of the University of Hong Kong. Established in July 2019, HKIAD includes all student unions of universities in Hong Kong with the primary mission of raising global awareness and support for Hong Kong's anti-extradition bill protesters and the pro-democracy movement. Mr. Zhang has participated in and organized exchange events and conferences in Hong Kong, Taiwan, South Korea, United States, and United Nations, and he recently gave a speech in the UK House of Commons in support of Hong Kong. Sharon Home, the Executive Director of Human Rights in China, where she leads its international advocacy and strategic policy engagement with NGOs, governments, and multi-stakeholder initiatives. HRIC has covered human rights and democracy development in Hong Kong extensively, including the 2014 Umbrella Movement. Ms. Home has presented in numerous hearings on a wide range of human rights issues before key European, U.S., and international policymakers. She is a professor of law emerita at the City University of New York School of Law and has taught law for 18 years, including training judges, lawyers, and law teachers at 8 law schools in China. Daniel Garrett, a PhD, an author, photographer, and political scientist focusing on Chinese security, politics, and securitization of Hong Kong. Since 2011, he has documented over 600 demonstrations, marches, and rallies in Hong Kong, including most recently the anti-extradition bill demonstrations. Dr. Garrett is a doctoral graduate of City University of Hong Kong with over 20 years of engagement with Hong Kong and completed his dissertation on One Country, Two Systems under China's national security framework. Dr. Garrett was a career national security professional providing strategic counterintelligence threat analysis and served at the Defense Intelligence Agency, National Security Agency, and in the United States Air Force. So I want to thank you all for being here. We are honored by your presence, and we'll begin with you, Mr. Wong.
Good morning, Chairman McGovern, Co-Chairman Rubio, and members of this commission. It's an honor to be invited back to Capitol Hill to speak about developments in Hong Kong. You may recall that I last traveled to Washington more than 2 years ago and testified before this commission in this same building on May 3rd of 2017. While I said back then, Hong Kong's one country, two system was becoming one country, 1.5 system. I don't think there's any doubt among observers who have followed recent events. Today, we're approaching dangerously close to one country, one system. The present state of affairs reflects Beijing's inability to understand, let alone govern, a free society. The ongoing demonstration began on June 9th, when 1 million Hong Kongers took to the street. And then the unthinkable happened. During that, Beijing controlled enough votes in the Legislative Council, protesters surrounded serving my first jail sentence. Determination. Lam suspended the bill on June 15, but fell short of fully withdrawing it. A historical 2 million people demonstrate the following day, equivalent to 1 in 4 out of our entire population. I'm not aware of anything comparable to this level of discontent against a government in modern history. I was released exactly 3 months ago, on June 17th, and have since joined fellow Hong Kongers to protest in the most creative ways possible. In addition to the bill withdrawal, we demand Lam to retract label on us as rioters, drop all political charges, and conduct an independent investigation into police brutality. Some of us crowdfunded for newspaper advertisement ahead of the G20 summit in late June, calling for the world not to neglect Hong Kong. Others entered the Chamber of Legislative Council complex on July 1st. The same day, another 500,000 Hong Kongers protest peacefully. Crowds continue to show up in large number in the past 15 weekends, with small rallies taking place almost daily across the territories. But the government would not listen. Instead of diffusing the political crisis, it dramatically empowered the riot police. The movement reached a turning point on 21 of July. That night, pro-Beijing clubs with suspect ties to organized crime gathered in the Yuen Long train station and indiscriminately attacked not just protesters returning home, reporters on the scene, but even passers-by. The police refused to show up despite repeat emergency call, plunging Hong Kong into a police state with more violence. On August 5th alone, the day Hong Kongers participated in a general strike, riot police shoot 800 canisters of tear gas to disperse the peaceful mass. Compare that to only 87 fire in the entire umbrella movement 5 years ago. The police's excessive force today is clear. Their excessive use of pepper spray, pepper balls, rubber bullets, beanbag rounds, and water cannons, almost all of which are imported from Western democracy, are no less troubling. In light of this, I applaud Chairman McGovern and Congressman Smith for introducing the Protect Hong Kong Act last week. Americans' company must not profit from the violence crackdown of freedom-loving Hong Kongers. Co-Chairman Rubio is also right for recently writing that Hong Kong's special status under American law depends on the city being treated as a separate customs area. Beijing should not have it both ways, grabbing all the economic benefit of Hong Kong's standing in the world, while erosion of our freedom. This is the most important reason why the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act enjoys the broad support of Hong Kong civil society. Lam finally withdrew the bill earlier this month, but just as protesters have long stopped calling for her resignation, this decision was almost meaningless by now. The movement is far from over because it has long moved beyond one bill or one person. Our most important demand is genuine structural change in Hong Kong, which means free election. Our government's lack of representation lies at the heart of the matter. As I speak, Hong Kong is standing at a critical juncture. The stakes have never been higher. We are confronted by the huge Chinese military build-up just across the border in Shenzhen. President Xi Jinping is unlikely to take hardline action before the upcoming National Day in October. But no one can be sure what's next. Sending in the tanks remains irrational, but not impossible. With Chinese interference in Taiwan, Tibet, and especially Xinjiang, it served as a reminder that Beijing is prepared to go far in pursuit of its grand imperial project. I was once the face of Hong Kong's youth activism. In this leaderless movement, my sacrifices are meaningless compared to those among us who have been laid off or protesting, who have been injured but too afraid of even going to a hospital, or who have been forced to take their own life, to have each lost and ours. The youngest of the 1,500 arrested so far is only 12 years old schoolboy. I don't know them personally, yet their pain is my pain. We belong to the same community, struggling for our rights of self-determination, so we can build one greater and common future. A child born today will not even have celebrated his or her 28th birthday by 2047, when the 50 years unchanged policy is set to expire. That deadline is closer to us than it appears. There's no loss. Decades from now, when historians look back, I'm sure that 2019 will turn out to have been a watershed. I hope historians will celebrate the United States Congress for having stood on the side of Hong Kongers, the side of human rights and democracy. God bless Hong Kong. Thank you.
Co-Chairman Rubio, and the members of this commission for holding this hearing and for having us here at this very critical moment for Hong Kong. For more than 100 days now, young people in Hong Kong have been at the forefront of our resistance. This is a leaderless movement with widespread participation from people of all walks of life. It is a fight for democracy, a fight for human rights, and most of all, a fight for universal values. What started in June as a 1 million people march has morphed into a struggle for fundamental political reform in Hong Kong. Chief Executive Carrie Lam's misjudgments and arrogance worsened the situation, resulting in a total clampdown of the Beijing government over Hong Kong's affairs. To date, more than 1,500 Hong Kongers, the youngest at the age of 12 years old, have been unreasonably arrested. Sadly, it has become a daily occurrence to see youngsters being pinned to the ground with head concussions if not being knocked unconscious. On the other hand, riot police and plainclothes officers have since early on deliberately hidden their ID numbers and warrant cards, making it impossible for us to even certify their legitimacy, let alone hold them accountable. On August 21st, police from the special tactical passengers randomly. They then shut down the station for 24 hours, refusing medical care for those who were injured, raising even suspicions of possible deaths in the station. Separately, now they will be charging in process where young people merely dressed in black can be searched or even these conflicts between two very different set values. On one, rights and the rule of law, and of its existence with a deep attachment in society's treasure. Hong Kong represents something unique in the world. We have long held dear our rule of law, transparent institutions, and the freedom of expression in a part of the world where these are most often threatened than upheld. However, this system is now under great threat. Companies like Hong Kong's major airline Cathay Pacific has succumbed to political pressure, firing dozens of employees due to their political stance. The business community is coerced into making political decisions. As a singer and activist from Hong Kong, I have experienced this oppression firsthand. Ever since the umbrella movement in 2014, I have been blacklisted by the communist government. My songs and my name are censored on Chinese internet. Pressured by the Chinese government, sponsors have pulled out, even international brands have kept their distances. For the past 5 years, and even more so recently, China tried to smear and silence me with their propaganda machines, spreading false claims. Right now, I am facing threats from pro-Beijing supporters and could face arrest and persecution at any time. Not only have I faced difficulties in both China and Hong Kong, but the self-censorship has now spread towards global institutions and cities. Recently, the National Gallery of Victoria in Melbourne, Australia, denied a venue to an event of Chinese artists Badi Cao and myself due to security concerns. Celebrities from Hong Kong, Taiwan, and China are all pressured into voicing their unanimous support for the Beijing government and could be condemned for keeping their silence. Hong Kongers are now living in a constant fear and have unfortunately lost the most of our freedoms. For a city that has been famously known as politically indifferent, the younger generations have took up the road to safeguard our home, standing up courageously to the corrupted system in spite of increased suppression. To the rest of the world, the United States is often a symbol of freedom and democracy. The freedom Americans enjoy is something that the people of Hong Kong have long hoped for. Even though our languages and cultures differ, what we have in common is the pursuit for justice, freedom, and democracy. Through the challenges of Hong Kong, the West is also waking up to China's insinuating power in global scale. Hong Kong is connected to the world in multiple ways, but China is trying to isolate it to exert control. If Hong Kong falls, it will easily become the springboard for the totalitarian regime of China to push its rules and priorities overseas, utilizing its economic powers to conform others to their communist values, just as they have done with Hong Kong in the past 22 years. The US and its allies have everything to fear if they wish to maintain a world that is free, open, and civil. I therefore urge the U.S. Congress to stand by Hong Kong, and most of all, to pass the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act. This is not a plea for the so-called foreign interference. This is a plea for democracy. This is a plea for the freedom to choose. And lastly, I would like to quote Eleanor Roosevelt, your most beloved First Lady. You gain strength, courage, and confidence by every experience in which you really stop to look fear in the face. You are able to say to yourself, I lived through this horror. I can take the next thing that comes along. This is a global fight for the universal values that we all cherish, and Hong Kong is in the very front lines of this fight. We are once fearful of what might have come with our silence, and for that, we have now become fearless. Thank you.
Mr. Jung, welcome.
Chairman McGovern, Co-Chairman Rubio, and members of the committee, thank you for your invitation to this hearing. Last year, Chinese President Xi Jinping said in a cold storm meeting that China would never embrace the judicial independence in the West. This is why people in Hong Kong are trying hard to reject the extradition bill, because we do not believe in a country who looks down on human rights, disqualifying our legislators, and kidnapping our book sellers. We want to protect our legal system as a last barrier against Beijing's political interference. Apart from asking for the withdrawal of the bill, Hong Kong people also demand for an investigation into police brutality to save Hong Kong from turning into a police state. More importantly, we demand for the universal suffrage. We deeply believe that without any structural political reform and a government chosen by the people, there is no possibility for Hong Kong to restore prosperity. We cannot have a society compromising the interests of individuals. The voice of these people should always be heard. Unfortunately, our government ignores our demands by saying that we have no stake in the society. Our student union members are detained, followed, beaten, and threatened. During the detainment, one of our student union members were told by the police that it was reasonable for them to rape some female protesters when they frequently work overtime. Besides, the authority tries to stop us from having peaceful class strike when more than 50,000 students participating in it. People who side with Beijing are now advocating to install surveillance cameras inside the classroom to monitor teachers and students who dare to support class strike and support the movement. Firstly, violates our academic freedom and freedom of speech. This is the rights terror created by the Beijing government, which should be alerted by all people here. Nowadays, students and Hong Kong people are even ready to die for Hong Kong, and some already did. They believe that the only limit to their freedom is their death. This is the ultimate sacrifice for the motherland, and we must not forget that. Many students face strong objection from their family. Some of them are even forced to leave home. But they still choose to head to the front line, carrying a letter with their last will. They are determined. They understand that the price of freedom is high. It always has been. But it is a price they are willing to pay, and it is a path of liberation they are willing to choose. We do not fight for freedom out of passion. Passion will burn out. We fight for freedom from sense of duty and dignity. China is rising. China is using its nationalism and invasive economic dominance to colonize small countries and put intense pressure on people and companies like Cathay Pacific who do not conform to them. Teachers, students, civil servants, businessmen are all facing political purge in Hong Kong. This new form of imperialism of China poses a severe threat to Hong Kong. This is a clash of values and system. We need to contain the Communist Party of China. Offering help to Hong Kong is the primary move to contain China. One country, two systems will expire in 2047. U.S. government should help Hong Kong people have the right to decide our future. Therefore, we urge the U.S. Congress to pass the Human Rights and Democracy Act to expand the current sanction list to all individuals who infringe our human rights. Moreover, if a general universal suffrage cannot be achieved immediately, our autonomy and rule of law will continue to erode. The situation of China manipulating Hong Kong as a backdoor for trading with Iran and North Korea will also continue. Then, the US government should not acknowledge the special status of Hong Kong. US must send a strong signal that this special status should be cancelled if Hong Kong lost its autonomy in order to put pressure on China. Otherwise, China will keep taking advantage of Hong Kong as an international society but hollow out our liberal values. With such an assertive policy, it demonstrates that America will no longer tolerate totalitarianism. Hong Kong people will take every step with the last inch of our efforts to fight for democracy and freedom. As Thomas Jefferson once said that he would be forever or against any form of tyranny. And I believe it's the time for Americans to stand with Hong Kong. 光復香港，時代革命。Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Chairman Governor, Co-Chair Rubio, and members of the Commission, thank you for this opportunity. It's an honor for me to stand in solidarity with the frontline activists. I want to thank the Commission members for their critical support for the Hong Kong people and your leadership on the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act and the Protect Hong Kong Act. Over the past 3 months, the whole world has witnessed a historic David and Goliath standoff. And against all odds, the Hong Kong people are standing up to the powerful authoritarian regime in Beijing. In this historic battle, they are not only fighting for the democratic future of 7.4 million Hong Kong people, but they're holding the regional and global front line on preserving human dignity and rights for all people. As Congressman McGovern has already mentioned, the past summer of discontent is in fact part of years of ongoing resistance by the Hong Kong people against Beijing's encroachment on Hong Kong's autonomy, rights, and freedom. The mass demonstrations in the past have included resistance against security legislation, official brainwashing initiatives, and the gutting of the promised genuine universal suffrage. After the clearance of the Occupy Central sites, democracy activists left a promise inscribed on the concrete sidewalks. We will return. They have kept that promise. Instead of Beijing's hope for movement fatigue, the protests, supported by unflagging solidarity and broad, diverse participation of Hong Kong society, are moving into the 15th week, pressing for now 5 non-negotiable demands. The out-of-control, lawless actions of the Hong Kong police have provided mobilization fuel for Hong Kong people to add oil. As Chairman Mao said, wherever there is suppression, there will be resistance. And at the beginning of the Cultural Revolution, he also said, anyone who crushes the student movement will not have a good ending. I want to talk about the rule of law just briefly because there are tensions that were baked into the one country, two systems framework, making one country, one system, or 1.5 system perhaps an inevitable outcome. Taiwan's president, Tsai Ing-wen's takeaway from the current political crisis hits the nail on the head. Not only is one country, two systems not a viable model for Taiwan, but the Hong Kong example proves that dictatorship and democracy cannot coexist. An independent functioning rule of law is essential, yet the Chinese state constitution and high-level policy pronouncements legitimizes the subordination of law to the leadership of the party. The reintroduction of the Article 23 legislation works in Hong Kong will inevitably carry imprints of the party's concepts of national security. Second, the demand for complete loyalty to the party guts the independence of key pillars of the rule of law, legal profession, and the media. But Hong Kong is not the mainland yet. Despite efforts like the proposed Hong Kong national anthem law and proposed loyalty requirements, loyalty, pride, and love cannot be legislated. So it's not surprising that Hong Kong people, foreign business, and the international community have been alarmed. The outrageous and painful excessive violence and abuse of law by the police have already been extensively described. I will move to then talking about what's at stake in terms of the universal values. China's aggressive activism at the UN is undermining international standards, weakening the existing human rights mechanisms, and restricting the participation of independent civil society. This cuts Hong Kong people, as well as human rights defenders of the mainland and Tibetan and Uyghur communities, from the key international platforms that's available to press for accountability. With this, instead of the West's hope for convergence, China is not only playing by the rules, it is vocally and persistently asserting a set of relativist criteria that it alone can apply, and pushing for Chinese models of human rights, democracy, and development. That is, no human rights, no development, and no democracy. This rhetoric helps to intimidate, silence, and deflect from the accountability of the state. I want to point quickly to its role in blocking independent voices. China sits on the ECOSOC committee of the UN, and Gongos, who do not face any objections, such as the interruptions of Denise Ho's recent intervention at the Human Rights Council. The intervention last week by Patsy Ho, the representative of the Hong Kong Federation of Women, is illustrative. She not only defended the SAR government's handling of the protests, but she accused the Hong Kong protesters of child exploitation and more. Patsy Ho, co-chairman and director of Macau Casino Operation, and is also a standing committee member of the Beijing Municipal Committee of the Chinese People's Consultative Conference. Because I am out of time, I want to really take the time to jump ahead to the problem of in addition to the disinformation campaign, including the egregious use by the China Daily on 9/11 of a photo depicting the destruction of the World Trade Towers to warn of terrorist attacks by Hong Kong protesters, Beijing is advancing a narrative of violence to frame the Hong Kong protests that is echoed uncritically by the international community. Within this framework, the Hong Kong police, protected in full tactical gear, armed with rubber bullets, guns, tear gas, pepper spray, and batons, wielding the coercive power of the state, is presented as one side of an escalating violence, clashes with civilian protesters. Hence, we hear both sides boycotts elderly citizens, silver hair volunteer stations, in neighborhood gatherings, all the neighborhoods in Hong Kong, and forming human chains, creating Lenin walls. And last Friday was Mid-Autumn Festival, and a small family-owned bakery in Saigon made mooncakes with protest slogans. And in typical humorous Hong Kong fashion, Hong Kongers are creating art. This is what is happening on the ground. Hong Kong people are practicing democracy and exercising their freedoms for as long as possible. Hong Kongers are making the road by walking it. That is the real revolution already underway. Thank you again, and I look forward to your questions.
Well, thank you very much. Dr. Garrett, thank you for coming, and we welcome your testimony.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman McGovern Rubio, distinguished members of the Commission. It is an honor and privilege to talk with you regarding the Chinese Communist Party's erosion of one country, two systems in Hong Kong under the pretext of national security and its nexus to the extradition bill crisis. I'll begin with 5 key observations background the current China-Hong Kong conflict and the one country, two systems crisis. First, today's one country, two systems is not the same as Deng Xiaoping's notion that proffered peaceful coexistence between the communist and Hong Kong systems. Instead, it has been replaced by Xi Jinping's new era one country, two systems model, embracing political struggle and enemy-friend binary, and foregrounding Chinese national security as the paramount lens for governing the special administrative region and implementing one country, two systems. Rather than a confidence-building mechanism ensuring peaceful coexistence, one country, two systems under Xi Jinping is now intended to advance and safeguard China's sovereignty, security, and development interests. 2, this new era one country, two systems model is informed by Xi Jinping's broader national security concepts known as the 3 major dangers and national security Chinese characteristics. The former situates communist China at imminent risk of being invaded, toppled, and separated, and its development, reform, and stability sabotaged, thereby leading to the derailing of rise socialist modernization and the one country, two systems policy. The latter dramatically broadens the notion of Chinese national security and radically expands the scope of Chinese authorities' prerogatives in administering one country, two systems. Consequently, it significantly erodes the special administrative region's high degree of autonomy, diminishes Hong Kongers' freedoms, and widens the threat to U.S. citizens and national interests in Hong Kong. Third, under Xi Jinping's new security paradigms and new era one country, two systems model, dissident Hong Kongers have been systematically enemified and securitized as moral threats to the party state, and banned or removed from positions of political power. Elections have been partially nullified, Hong Kongers disenfranchised, and terrorized with real and rhetorical political violence. The promise of Hong Kong people ruling Hong Kong has been effectively replaced with the tyrannical role of patriots. Official declarations in party state media propagating Hong Konger enemy and Hong Kong threat security discourses have become ubiquitous, and cultural revolution like mass line and United Front denunciation campaigns targeting Democrats, localists, and westernized Hong Kongers have swept the sea repeatedly over the last 7 years since Xi Jinping came to power. 4. Since at least 2012, Hong Kong and one country, two systems have been perceived by Beijing as communist China's weak links in its resurgent totalitarian national security state. For Chinese authorities, both are at the forefront of ideological confrontation with the United States and the West, a new Cold War in their terms. By the end of 2014, in the Umbrella Movement, the struggle to rule Hong Kong was said to have matched the intensity surrounding the 1997 handover, and that China had to now rethink how to rule the enclave. An influential advisor to senior Chinese authorities said that Hong Kong faced a society-wide, quote-unquote, long-term struggle to eradicate the party state's enemies in the city, a de facto cultural revolution that would involve, at a minimum, rectifying and synthesizing the judiciary, legislature, media, secondary schools, and universities. The Chinese and special administrative regions' furtive efforts to impose the communist legal, political, and social norms on Hong Kong via the extradition law and unprecedented violent suppression of protests have provoked the most severe crisis of one country, two systems, as Hong Kongers fight for their endangered freedoms, identity, and way of life. This is not an anomaly. It is the 6th Chinese governance crisis involving one country, two systems since 2003, and the 5th since Xi Jinping took control of Hong Kong affairs. Each has an underlying Chinese national security nexus seeking to broaden Beijing's powers, its so-called comprehensive jurisdiction in Hong Kong, and to roll back Hong Kongers' high degree of autonomy, liberal freedoms, and limited democracy by forcibly transforming Hong Kong into a Chinese communist city while maintaining a veneer of no changes. My next few observations will quickly touch upon the extradition law nexus to national security. Senior Chinese officials have described the battle, the extradition battle right now, as a quote-unquote battle of life and death, and as a battle to defend Hong Kong. A decisive war defending one country to two systems or jeopardizing it. Since Xi Jinping came to power, national security is now a mandatory obligation for people in the Hong Kong SAR. This was never written in the original basic law. This has been done post facto since 2012. Early in the extradition law saga, senior Chinese leaders have made extraordinary endorsements of the extradition law, expressing their full support. This included 2 Politburo Standing Committee members, Han Zheng and Wang Yang, the head of the State Council's Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office, Zhang Xiaoming, and the chief of the Hong Kong SAR Liaison Office, Wang Zhimin. There are also indications that President Xi Jinping, as a member of the Central Coordination Group for Hong Kong and Macau Affairs, has weighed in. An influential United Front commentator in state media has also observed that if it were not for the full support of the central government, the legislation would have been aborted. Chief Executive Carrie Lam recently lamented in a leaked speech that since the issue had been elevated to one of national security and sovereignty, it had stripped her of any solutions or room for political moves. Another source explained that because the ELAB involved the mainland special administrative region relationship with the central government in the implementation of the basic law, it was not a matter entirely within the autonomy of the special administrative region government. This touches upon Hong Kongers' 5 demands as well as U.S. national security, U.S. policy towards Hong Kong. Beijing's imposition of communist legal, political, and social national security norms on Hong Kong constitute a violation of Article 5 of the Basic Law, prohibiting the introduction of a socialist system in the territory. Moreover, the party's application of its national security with Chinese characteristics mandate and loyalty expectations to the Special Administrative Region and its civil servants effectively dissolves any difference between the communist and Hong Kong systems, thereby posing a significant threat to U.S. interests related to the protection of sensitive technologies and adherence to export controls. I'll have 2 comments before I submit the rest of my testimony. The Hong Kong police force has been militarized and nationalized by the Chinese Communist Party, effectively becoming its little administrative region. Since the beginning of 2019, mainland police have been tasked by President Xi with, quote unquote, preventing and countering color revolutions, unquote. China's public security minister subsequently ordered police to firmly fight to protect China's political security, unquote, defend its national security and the leadership of the Communist Party. Earlier, Hong Kong police had received similar national security tasking from Vice Premier Han Zheng, who, in August 2018, charged them to, quote unquote, firmly and effectively safeguard national security and rule of law by actively and comprehensively implementing one country, 2 systems. Also, according to the Vice Chairman of the State Council's Chinese Association of Hong Kong and Macau Studies, the Hong Kong police were now, quote unquote, on the forefront when it came to curbing Hong Kong independence, which meant their duty was not just to maintain public order, but to defend national security too. Chinese our Chief Executive Carrie Lam, in a leaked speech, also iterated that the Hong Kong police were the only solution that they currently possess in dealing with the extradition process. In no small way, the Hong Kong police have become the Special Administrative Region's People's Armed Police. My last comment. Chinese authorities have dedicated significant academic, legal, political, propaganda, and united front resources to systematically manipulating and recasting Deng Xiaoping's era content and understandings of the basic law in one country, 2 systems to accommodate Xi Jinping's totalitarian national security mandates, logics, and outlook. The Chinese Association of Hong Kong Macau Studies, or Hong Kong Macau Studies Association, a shadowy political warfare-like think tank connected to the State Council's Hong Kong and Macau's Affairs Office, is one of these new subversive vehicles. Concurrently, a network of party-state constitutional and basic law experts and scholars, some attached to the National People's Congress Standing Committee, Hong Kong Basic Law Committee, have similarly contributed significantly to the erosion of one country, 2 systems policy, mobilized political bonds, and informed the central authorities' understandings of the actual situation in the region. All of these united frontiers are key players in the erosion of Hong Kong's freedoms and democracy and enablers of state tyranny. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll save my questions to the end. I'm going to yield now to the co-chair, Senator Rubio.
Thank you, and I'll just ask one question because I know members have places to go and I wanted to get in on this. But the key issue before us is autonomy. If you go back in 2014, they took away universal suffrage for the chief executive. In 2016 and 17, they disqualified 6 Democratic lawmakers from legislative council seats using a very controversial interpretation of the Hong Kong Constitution. And then in 2019, this effort at the extradition bill. So my question to all the panelists is, how would you describe the state of Hong Kong autonomy today?
During the last congressional hearing, I'm strongly aware how one country, 2 system eroded to be one country, 1.5 system. But the recent political crisis by how Hong Kong and Beijing government turned such a global city into the police state with more violence and even white terror, I would describe now as the collapse of one country, 2 system, and also we're facing the death under the current constitutional framework. And I think now is also the time and the reason which we hope to seek for bipartisan support. Support Hong Kong's democratization should not be the matter of left or right. It should be the matter of right or wrong.
So on a more cultural and social context, there is an immense fear among the people to speak their minds. which is a result of how the businesses and the government institutions, they have put pressure onto their employees or the people to keep their mouths shut, basically. And so this has a huge impact on the economy because without this freedom of speech, it's very difficult for the economy and also the society to thrive, because in a sense we are already in somewhat of a China situation where people would fear for their safety if they spoke out about their political stance. Just for an example, there has been an unofficial Hong Kong anthem recently that has been written by an anonymous songwriter, and they have opted to keep their anonymity because if they have shown their faces, then most probably they would have been arrested or prosecuted because of on claims of national threats, national security threats. So that's basically the sentiment on the grounds for Hong Kong people.
Last year, the USCC published a report concerns that Hong Kong is becoming more likely like any other Chinese city. And that means that our autonomy is already gone. And actually, even the USCC has issued a report to claim that the autonomy of Hong Kong is already in danger. In UK, when I met some politicians, I would tell them that the Chinese government already breached the Sino-British Joint Declaration. And that's why I would say the autonomy of Hong Kong is already dead, and that's why we urge the US government and other European countries try to help with Hong Kong with many, like passing the Human Rights and Democracy Act. And you can pass the Global Magnitsky Act in other countries, urge your allies to pass them, to let other European countries to stand with Hong Kong.
The economy, Senator Rubio question is extremely important because post-1989, that was a decision that was made by the Communist Party. We're going to go forth back into market and economic reforms, but absolutely no political reforms. This has been echoed by the chief executive when she endlessly has been having these kind of ridiculous press conferences where she says nothing. One thing she does say is, we need to restore the economy. We need to restore economic order, and completely ignoring the structural political issues that is causing a lot of fundamental unrest. So the other point I wanted to add is that the Hong Kong economy was not delivering the goods to most of the Hong Kong people. The tycoons and probably the triads were doing quite well, but not the problem of the elderly with not adequate care and so forth, and healthcare. So the economy wasn't delivering, and I think what needs to happen, yes, there should be a renewal of the economy, but it's going to be an economy that works for all the people. If I could pick up quickly on Sunny's reference to autonomy. Autonomy, what it means for the Communist Party is we only need to look at the so-called autonomous regions in Tibet and Xinjiang. What autonomy means is no cultural, no language, no history, no right to believe or practice your faith under the Sinicization of religion, which is an oxymoron. And their understanding of autonomy even extends to past this life. As you know, the party is trying to now control reincarnation. So they're also trying to impose a notion of Chineseness. What kind of Chineseness? Well, Xi Jinping's notion of Chineseness under the Chinese dream and what is Chinese. But Hong Kongers are quite complex as a history and language and culture, and I think Hong Kongers are going and are negotiating what it means to be a Hong Konger, whether it includes being a Chinese. Does it mean that? And I think that's what it means to be free, the right to decide and determine in this way, what does it mean to be who we are? That is absolutely antithetical to the DNA of the Communist Party and its notion of autonomy, because it doesn't exist.
Thank you. The rule of patriots in Hong Kong basically means that there is no substantive high degree of autonomy. Basically, under Xi Jinping, a democratic centralism is practiced. They may solicit input from the Hong Kong government, But once Beijing makes a decision, the SAR government has to implement it. Building on Dr. Holmes' comments here, national identity is now a national security issue for the Communist Party in Hong Kong. And they believe that one of the major problems, this goes back to 2007, when Hu Jintao told the Hong Kong government on the 10th anniversary that the SAR government had to create a new generation of Hong Kongers who loved one country, two systems, who loved China. That the recovery of Hong Kong would not be complete until Hong Kongers identified with China, with communist China. This also touches on Xi Jinping's Chinese communist identity politics, which is attempting to rehabilitate the spoiled image of the Communist Party and the spoiled whilst protecting the national anthem, martyrs and so forth like this. And so in Hong Kong, which has always been historically anti-communist to a large degree, there was this effort related to the extradition campaign to eradicate so-called anti-communist sentiment and anti-communist forces. With regards to autonomy, because the Belt and Road Initiative and the Greater Bay Area initiatives are key to China's development program right now, because the central government believes that the major impediment to Hong Kong signing on and strongly supporting these programs has been the two systems, has been its democracy, has been its freedoms. It is now looking to restrict those in order to force the SAR government to support these programs. So once again, in closing, I would say there is no substantive autonomy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Swazi.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Chairman Rubio for holding this hearing. We appreciate you bringing us together. Thank you, Chairman, Representative Smith, Ranking Member Smith, for the work that you've done on this issue for so many years. Thank you to the witnesses. We are so grateful to all of you for the information you've given us here today and for shining a light on this. I know we sit here in